Hey guys, welcome to this week's MBY Devotion. After our little detour into the Psalms last week, I'd like to bring us back to Job. Now, if you've been following along with these, you'd know that I've already spoiled the big moment of this book 2 weeks back, when we went through God's reply to Job's questioning of God's actions. But I still think there's plenty to be learned in the lead up to that. So over the next few weeks, we'll be going back to the start of the story and highlighting a few things throughout the book. Now, to give basic context again, Job was what you'd call a good guy. Right? He worked hard, he loved his family, and he honored God. But Satan was adamant that Job only honored God because of all the other blessings in his life. Now, to prove that this wasn't true, God allowed Satan to take away first Job's wealth, then Job's children, and finally Job's health. This led Job to a pretty low place. And throughout the story, we see him struggle with God over all of this. In fact, the whole book is a bit of a back and forth as Job and those around him try to process what's going on. And the first person to offer their advice in this situation was his wife. However, it wasn't very good advice. Let's take a look at what she says in Job chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, not long after Job's health had been taken from him. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, "Are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die." Curse God and die. This was not good advice. Right? It didn't honor God. It didn't show compassion for Job. And if Job had done this, it would have been exactly what Satan wanted. This was just really bad advice from someone who should have had Job's best interests at heart. Have you ever gotten really bad advice about God from someone close to you? Have you ever had a close friend or family member tell you that God's not real, that God's not kind and loving, that God is not interested in you? Have you ever had someone close to you try to convince you that you shouldn't be following God? How hard did you find that? I know for me, when someone I love and trust is offering up bad advice about God, it's tough because we love and respect them and their opinions so much. And it can mess with your mind and leave you wondering if maybe they might be right. Now, luckily for Job, this was still early on, and he still had a good enough attitude towards God, especially considering what he had been through. He had a good enough attitude to push back against this bad advice. Let's look at his response in chapter 2, verse 10. But Job replied, "You talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad?" So in all this, Job said nothing wrong. There was real wisdom in Job's response here. Should we only accept the good things that happen and not expect anything bad? Right? Job was able to speak back against the bad advice by falling back onto godly wisdom. So far in these devotions, I've been stressing the importance of godly wisdom to help us understand things. But godly wisdom is not only useful as we consider things ourselves, it's also so valuable in situations when people are trying to speak untruths into our lives. Job's wife was giving him what she thought was a good option, but with wisdom, Job was able to argue back against that advice and speak truth into the situation. When we seek and receive God's wisdom, we're equipped to answer back to the bad advice people try to give us in our lives. Sometimes they might be offering up what they genuinely believe, but that doesn't make it true, and it doesn't make it good advice. When we have the truth on our side, we can withstand all sorts of bad advice. So that's my challenge to you today. To seek wisdom, not only for understanding, but as a shield and sword against the lies and bad advice that people send your way. When we have wisdom that comes from God, we can not only identify bad advice, but we can push back against it, ensuring that the doubts and fears it may have brought us do not take root.